Good morning. Welcome to the Miami Business Leaders Podcast, where we delve into the core of what matters most to business owners. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Our mission is to empower, enlighten, and inspire entrepreneurs and business leaders like you by sharing insights, strategies, and real life stories from the heart of Miami's bustling business community. Whether you're just starting out or scaling to new heights in your business journey, we're here to guide you through every step. So let's dive in and explore the dynamic world of business together. And today we have a very special guest today. All our guests are always special, but especially with Greta. She is someone I've come to know in the last probably, 6, 8 months or so, you would say, Greta?
Yes.
Yes, and she is. We're going to be talking all about insurance. As business owners, this is probably one of the items that we don't really think about. We may always think about your standard errors and emissions, and make sure your insurance for your employees and things like that. But we're going to be talking about disability insurance, business overhead expense insurance, multi-life income protection insurance, and what business owners should be looking for and what's important. We'll talk also about key person insurance in your business, and how it affects different things in there. And also we'll be covering why you should be careful with online information and the importance of keeping your business valuation current for better insurance decisions. So we have a lot in store for you. So welcome, Greta.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to have been getting to know you and your business over the last couple months, and to hear you speak when you speak so clearly that the rest of us business owners that are listening in our group that we've gotten to know each other in are taking copious notes every time you're giving us tips about how to protect ourselves. And you want, in that same vein, you want to know what you can do now so you don't have an issue, and if there is an issue, what to do with it, where to go. So I really appreciate you having me on today. And I think, in one sentence, I'll start with a somewhat of a success story, but a client recently down here in Miami, really great business, had 40 employees, was really making things happen in his community, opening a second location. Everything was on the up and up. Everything was great. And we were able to review these policies that we're going to get into today for him. And knew that it was probably going to be a sticky conversation, because when he sent me the file with all of his insurance policies, it was labeled, "I hate insurance."
Wow.
So that was a fun conversation, because when we opened up the analysis of what insurances this person had for their business, it was the wrong policies, the wrong amounts, overpayment, the wrong occupation, which really is a big deal in these certain types of insurances. And by the time we finished with him, it was about a 6-month process. We were able to save him money, insure his employees better, insure his own income better. And he resent me the file. And what did it say?
I love insurance.
He didn't say love, but he
Okay.
said, "I don't mind insurance. I'll
Okay,
take
I
it."
don't mind. Yes,
I
awesome. Awesome. So let's do a quick rewind and let's talk about how did you even get started, in the insurance business?
Yes, great question. In 2012, I lived in New York City, and I had come from a background of corporate account work. I worked for companies such as Equinox and Estee Lauder. I was only always in the business of working with business owners to help them increase their revenue and retain their employees. But from a standpoint of, I was still selling some type of product in those industries, I wasn't selling financial solutions. And I turned to my boss at the time and said, "I think I need to get a financial planner and figure out my own insurance and my own financial planning." And that day in 2010 changed my life, because I went back into the world to figure out what licensing I needed to do this career, and left my secure, corporate, cushy, I call it mindless, soulless job, to go into something where every day I'm faced with the challenge of how to get persons or companies the best coverage, and how to come up with a solution. And it really brings me joy to have someone send me a file that used to say they hate what I do for a living and what I'm about, and now that they like it. But I really got into the industry because I was a client of the firm, and now 12 years later, officially started this practice in 2012. I'm able to say that I live down here in Miami, which is amazing. No disrespect to New York, but I'm done with
Mhm.
those winters. I'm
Yep.
done. And also able to help so many more people down here because we've seen since COVID the rise in entrepreneurship. Like any other, no other time in history have we seen so many people leaving and starting their own businesses, and not there's not really a 101 what to do. So we come in to help those business owners make sure their livelihoods protected, and then we're still able to go back and help our New York clients. Occasionally, we fly back there, do a meeting, come back. But what's really been important for us is the amount of industry. I'm sure you know this, the amount of companies that are moving down here and moving
Hmm.
headquarters down here, and the entrepreneurship that's happening out of Miami in general, but also Florida. So that's where we want to serve down here. But for me, it started off as a client. I was really called into the business as someone who wanted to figure out what else I could do and how else I could serve a community. And lastly, I'll say that sometimes in the insurance world or financial services world, we see that still a little bit underserved. And what I mean by that is often a female business owner is overlooked, someone of any kind of ethnicity is overlooked. And I also just recently worked with a client who was transgender. She had never been approached of multi-million dollar business. No one had approached her in this way to talk about this type of planning. And so that's what we also really try to do is work with communities of people who need these solutions but maybe haven't been able to talk to someone or felt comfortable or felt like the world of insurance is a little bit full of jargon and technical terms, and it doesn't need to be. And that's why we want to do this call today with you.
Awesome. Yeah, because I even think for myself when I'm thinking insurance, and it's usually like, I just listen to what the person tells me. Oh, here, sign here, and it's 30 pages, but nobody actually explains it to me. They just basically, I just sign here, right? And now it's like,
Yeah.
online and things like that. So let's talk about, here in our show. And by the way, anybody that is listening to our audience, we are live. It is Wednesday, 11:39 Eastern. So if you have any questions for Greta, go ahead and start putting in the chat, and we're definitely going to be able to answer those for you. So let's first talk about, let's just say the top three, top five insurances that every business owner, no matter if they're a 10-person, a 100-person, what type of insurance do you see that every business owner should have for their business and for themselves?
Absolutely. Well, it's not on the list, but I will say
Mhm.
health insurance.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
the younger the entrepreneur, the list that you kind of said before, but when it is sometimes age dependent. When I work with a 25-year-old business owner, they might think they're invincible from the standpoint of health insurance, but it's really important to make sure you have some type of policy in place. And state by state, it's specific as far as how many employees you have and if you're paying into the insurance. But remember, health insurance can also be a way to retain your top employees. And there are people in the job market right now who will leave a higher paying job for benefits at another company. So when you can, when it's appropriate, look into health insurance. There's many ways to do it nowadays. So make sure whether it's through your payroll, you can ask your CPA for a recommendation. You can talk to someone like me who's a specialist in insurance, ask around to your other friends that are entrepreneurs of your size, but get yourself covered. And the reason for that is if something were to happen, the amount that an emergency room visit would cost you without health insurance could just ruin your whole business and you're just trying to get started. So at any level, health insurance and shop it around each year. Don't just, what you said before, sign that 30-page document or e-sign the renewal because you want to make sure you're getting good service. Second thing is protect your income. So we listed before individually protecting your income. We'll say the jargon term here is IDI, individual disability insurance. And when I say disability, what do you think? Just anything you say is correct. But when I say the word disability, viscerally, what kind of comes to mind?
Well, definitely not being able to work. I'm thinking both short term and long term. The one
Okay.
that scares me is the long term one. but just like, you know, what if something happened to my hand and I use my hand most of the time to type? Like what happens then, right?
Perfect. That's a great example. A lot of times when I ask people that question, they think iron lung, comatose, I would work through
Oh,
anything. And really you're correct. It's anything that would keep you from doing your particular job. And so we think of like a surgeon, a highly specialized surgeon, or we could even go further and think of a celebrity and think how celebrities have certain body parts insured that are very important to them. I think I've heard
wow.
something about Messi's legs. I didn't do the policy,
Wow.
so I don't know, but I think there's
Okay.
a couple million on each leg. So when we think of you as the business owner, it's absolutely correct. If you can't get up and do your job that you've worked so hard on, then what's the backup plan? Maybe your spouse is going to support you. Maybe you're going to go on state disability. It's not going to be enough coverage. But protecting your income as a new or experienced business owner is a very important thing. It might not be like your health insurance where you need to reprice it or renew it each year. However, that's where you want to make sure you're buying a policy that has something on it called own occupation. And all that means is that if I can't do my job, if I can't speak and I can't uh, find a way to communicate with clients the way I do, maybe I can go open that vegan cupcake shop of my dreams and I can do that job. And that means I can collect from the policy from my own occupation not being able to do and still provide for my family and work. So the definition of what that policy is really important. And I don't know if I would buy it if it didn't have that policy definition. That's why you want to read page 5 or 6 or 7 of 30. Yeah. And then the third thing would be what you said before, business overhead. It's another version of protecting your income, but think of all the expenses you have as a business owner. So let's list some expenses: marketing, payroll,
Hmm.
insurance, rent, manufacturing, supplies. We could go on and on, networking, what it costs to run a business. Business overhead expense is a quick infusion of money, maybe 30 grand a month, maybe 100 grand a month, whatever it costs to run your business, your expenses. And that money would come into the business very quickly at time of a claim and even allow you to hire another you so you could find a way to then sell the business or come back to the business, that way keeping you, your employees, your business whole if you can't work. So individual cover health insurance, individual income protection, business overhead protection. As you said, short-term and long-term play into the IDI, so that's kind of part of it. And then fourth, if we're saying top place of insurance, we don't necessarily handle this type, but it's what you mentioned up top, your errors, your omissions, any type of liability coverage. That's another one, like number one, that you want to probably shop around each year. It's not a bad idea to ask your professional, shop it around for me, see which carriers might offer something better. And then fifth, maybe you also want to look into something like we talked about key person. Maybe you want to look into life insurance with some savings component, but those would be the top 5.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like you need all of them because if you have because there's ones that's going to help you with the personal side, and then there's going to be another one that handles the business side. Because for me, for example, if I stop working, if I, you know, God forbid, I stop working and I can't work for 6 months or whatever the case is, like you said, okay, the company, if it pays me, it's going to now like, what about the work? Yes, it's paying me, great, but then the work is not getting done and the company now needs to hire another me. So then that's so I need to make sure that my mortgage is still paid and the groceries are still done. And that's going to be the disability insurance. But then now the business side needs another me for X amount of time. And that's when the business overhead is going to still be taken care of. Did I get that right?
You absolutely did. And the business overhead is often overlooked. And I'll be very transparent. I think it's overlooked because on my end, it's a very low commissioned product. So
Okay.
maybe, not me, but maybe there's people in the industry that don't talk about it, because it's not really something that's going to pay a high commission. But in my mind, it's almost where we start because let's get that done. Let's make sure the biggest risk is taken off the table, even if I said health insurance was number one. But that way we know that that infusion of money is there. And that bill in particular, you're going to want to go back to your CPA and always get the CPA or your tax preparer's info, is usually a deductible expense. And we business owners love a deductible expense.
Right. So you also mentioned about key person. So, key person for me means my right-hand person. Is that the same terminology?
Key person could be your right-hand person, or you could be your own key person. So
Oh,
a business could have multiple key people. They're usually at the executive level or your highly compensated employees. It might be, let's go to my vegan cupcake shop idea.
are you vegan?
Now, no, I'm not at
Okay,
all.
okay,
I'm
okay.
not at all. But I want to put bacon bits on it. This is why I can't be the key person, and I'm not a good baker. I'm not even, the husband will tell you, I'm not even that good of a cook. I cook very fast because I'm busy reading these policies all day long.
Right, right, right.
But when I do cook or bake, I like to not follow a recipe, and so though I wanna own the vegan cupcake shop and operate it, and I want my face on everything, I should not be behind the scenes making up the recipes. This we're clear on. So I need to hire that key star baker, and that person is really the heart and soul of my business, and maybe they don't want their face out there, and they're happy with being behind the scenes. But if I were to lose that key person, I'd be at huge risk for the business and the success of the business. So sometimes the key person is someone in a technology space, in a tech company. Sometimes the key person is your number one salesperson. Sometimes the key person is the CFO or the CEO, or there's multiple key people in a business. Recently, I had a client who purchased an automotive shop, and he knows nothing about running an auto body shop. So we had to make sure that those key people that had been in the business for decades had an incentive to stay with new ownership. So you'll see key person come into play a lot sometimes in the startup world when investor money's coming in, and often when there's a change of ownership or when a business leaves the growth stage and is in more of a maturity stage. And you sort of look around your business structure and say, is it me or is it someone who's my right hand or my left hand that if they weren't here tomorrow or if they were disabled tomorrow, how would I compensate them? That's another way to use those other policies we talked about. That's sort of like the multi-life idea, that you would have a way to compensate through the business. The insurance company would come in and pay that salary to the person so that they could get better, or if they can't get better, you can find someone else and replace it. Does that make
So,
sense?
no, it makes perfect sense. So, does the key person have to agree, or
Great
okay?
question. Yes. Now, here's where we run into questions often. And I think when I look at movies, I happen to love Law and Order. And I write down in Law and Order every time someone taps into an insurance policy for a nefarious reason, and I jokingly say, "Oh my gosh, I don't think that would happen for a $50,000 payout, maybe for 5 million, but I don't think all that would happen for such a low amount." And also what they get wrong in regular TV is that you could put insurance on someone without their knowing. The employee or the person has to oblige, has to sign a form, has to go through what we call underwriting, has to disclose certain things about their driving record and their health record. So there is a huge myth out there that anyone could take out a policy on someone without their knowledge.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Because when you say key person, and I just imagine like if I had a boss and my boss is like, "Hey, I want to put a insurance on," and he was like, "Should I know something? Are you like colluding with my wife on? You guys are just so okay, good. That's good to
It's a
know. That's
great
refreshing to
question.
know. Okay, awesome. So let's go to the next question and let's talk about some online information. So obviously in the world of Google and Chat GPT, people can ask questions, but and then they may think they don't even need a Greta because they can just, hey, I can just Google it. But talk about what's happening there when people are Googling and seeing these newsletters and articles and things like that?
Great question. In the world of insurance, I mentioned this world underwriting. So you get underwritten for your mortgage from the bank for the loan. You show them financial documents, you get a number, you work with them, you borrow the money. In these types of insurances, the people insurances known as disability insurance, there's another one out there called long-term care insurance and life insurance. And we might use the life insurance or the disability insurance under the key man chassis or the multi-life chassis. It is so nuanced in how the application is going to be interpreted. Meaning, let's say I have no back issues, but the day that I did the application, my back was hurting from doing a workout. This is a
Hmm.
true story. I did a heavy workout the other day. I went a little above what I should have, and I threw my back out. There's nothing wrong with me. I just had to rehab on my own with some stretching and some ice packs and a little bit of ibuprofen. But if I was doing my application that day and the question came up, "Are you disabled?" I might have felt disabled or unable to work. So the way that that question is interpreted is very
Mm,
nuanced. And if you're filling out an application online, it might seem black and white. The question might be, "Do you travel?" Well, sure. Who doesn't travel? It's not
right.
COVID per se anymore, but the question is more where are you traveling to? Are you trying to travel to somewhere that war is happening? Are you flying a plane traveling there? Are you risky? So there's so much more underlining to just the black and white question. And so with these types of policies, cover letters are really important. That's what an agent does, gets your life story, writes down everything about, let's say, my back injury that wasn't really an injury. No, she's not actually injured. She went back to work in 4 days. She just lifted too heavy. She saw a doctor. Nothing's wrong with her. That will make a huge difference in if I get approved and the pricing, and also if that actual policy decides to insure my back or not.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. And that's why it's, I guess, important why they need to talk to you, because that way you can help fill out those applications and forms and not accidentally sabotage the whole process.
Yes, I think the consumer, you always want to be very transparent, very honest. It's extremely important to lay everything on the line with these
Mhm.
policies. And it's also important to have an advocate, a go between, an agent, a broker, really fighting for you and making sure that they're putting that application with the carrier that's best suited for you. Some carriers price better for females. Some carriers price better for certain age groups. Some carriers love owners of vegan cupcake shops, and some do not. So if you're applying at the wrong place, and that could be very overwhelming when using an online portal and when using an online service, how would you know the insider knowledge that I know living in this world each day of where to start when you're purchasing these types of insurance? And also, some of the questions seem black and white, they're not so black and white.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have an audience question. And so thank you, Karen. And the question is, are there any emerging risks that business owners should be aware of and prepare for with insurance coverage?
Yes, I think number one is just the idea that if you are a new business owner, if your business was started in the last 2 years, we just said, go get all these things. And now, if you're in your first 2 years of business, you might not be able to buy these things. Not all of them, but some of the things that we mentioned might not, excuse me, might not be applicable or allowable in your first 2 years of business. So, emerging risks might be if you're thinking about starting a business, but you're currently at a W 2 or salaried position, you might want to think about some of these policies cart before horse before the
Hmm.
business even exists. Sometimes based on your profession, you are allowed to buy these policies in your current profession and then restructure them as you become a new business owner. So just because you have a business and you're an LLC or you're any type of corp doesn't mean that you all of a sudden get to go buy these policies off the shelf. They're very nuanced in the type of who gets the policy and who doesn't and the type of business you're in.
Yeah.
Emerging risks, I kind of brought it up before with travel, but if you have a company where you travel to another country regularly, you do want to be sure you're very transparent about your travel schedule, but the insurance companies want to be sure that you have banking done in the US, you're paid by a US company, you cannot pay for the premiums on a credit card, so no points.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So you have to be in the US, not a PO box. You have to have a US presence, a US address, a US banking system, a US paycheck, a US tax filing in order to purchase most of these policies. So you want to think about that too if you're someone who's into travel or is not domiciled here. And lastly, just emerging risk is everything you tell your doctor can be found. So take care of your health, take care of everything you need to take care of, and also make sure when you're talking to your doctor that your notes are correct. I would advocate for every person who sees a doctor to see their doctor notes right after their visit and make sure that your doctor put everything in there correctly. And from personal experience, I just went recently to get a root canal and they said they could not find my records because they had put my entire file under a different person.
Oh, wow.
So I don't blame the office. I love my dentist, but just make sure, advocate for yourself. Outside of that, insurance is a very financially safe type of thing. And what I mean by that is these companies really know what they're doing. They've been doing it a long time. But if you're in a profession that's sort of new to them, let's say you're an influencer and you want to insure your income, the insurance companies might not really know what that is. So you have to, again, work with someone, have everything ducks in a row, but some of these newer categories of job titles are not recognized by the carriers. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, it was helpful for me. And that actually sparked another question I had because, even if you're a solopreneur or you have 10 employees or you have 100 employees, there's still a financial cost and there's still like a balance of what insurance and what you have to prioritize because, everything you've said is great as far as like, wow, I need it. But then there's also as a business owner, okay, great, I need it, but that doesn't mean I can afford everything, especially if I can't put on my credit card. And
Yeah.
therefore, which ones do I have? And I guess that's more of an internal discussion to see, a risk factor as far as, okay, what is the likelihood of this? Or, how bad do I need, this versus that one? And then internally, and I'm sure then with you as well, you can kind of help them navigate that as well.
Yes, and I would say that's where the self-education, which a lot of business owners have already, they maybe don't have time. I'm not asking you to read every single line of the 72-page document that I send you, but you should read it enough. There should be so many questions answered by the time you purchase a policy. You know what it means to have a base amount, what each rider is. True story. The first time I bought a car, as someone who never really owned a car, living in Brooklyn, before I moved to Miami. My husband walked away for a minute. The guy handed me a water, and I started signing up for everything on that car. My husband came back around and said, "What are you doing? What is she doing?" I said, "I'm signing up for everything. It's insurance, tire." And the guy was grinning ear to ear because he got me. And my
Right.
husband made him shred that document. He's like, She does not need those things." And the guy was like, "Oh, I almost had her," because I just didn't know. And here, me in this industry didn't know to ask about all these add-ons I just was getting sold. You have the right as a consumer to ask, what are all these costs? Go by line with the breakdown page and make sure that you need all the additional add-ons. Sometimes they're really great. Sometimes you can dig into them and say, why do I need the add-ons? Why can't I just have the base?
Yes. And, me being in the cybersecurity company, kind of a little off topic, but similar. when we talk about the key, because I'm actually thinking about, like, I don't have key person insurance for my right hand person, and that also kind of just talks about, in cybersecurity we talk about redundancy. We talk about making sure that not one person knowledge is, like, especially like it's up here in their head, like they're able to train others and cross train. So for business owners, this is just another example, because we had someone one time talk about this on our show, and it was just talking about, like, how even if you do have a COO or you have a senior VP or something like that, everything needs to be documented, so that someone, because I'm sure even if you did have this policy, that doesn't mean that tomorrow, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't mean tomorrow the cash infusion comes in. And even if the cash came in that same day that you signed a policy, well, that new person needs to be trained. They need to know, do I go left? Do I go right? Like, so you still need to have this stuff in writing, in a binder, digital, of how the company operates, what this person's position is, how they go about it, usernames and passwords and things like that. So it's also not just having the insurance, which is great, but you also just need to make sure in your business you are operating effectively, so that when you do have to use it, the next person that comes behind them is able to just go jump on that horse and keep on going.
It's such a good point that you make because the customer service of a carrier is really important. And how would you know as the consumer, if you've never had to file a claim, if that company has a good infrastructure or not? So working with an agent that has had a claim happen, that has helped a client through, that has a direct lead into updating something. And to your point, we're consumers, so we purchase things. We turn to our right to our friend who says, "Get something." I have to get that too. And there isn't a 101 for a lot of business owners on what to do. So we really have to seek it out. And I just want to instill in every business owner or non-business owner, you have a right for the policy to be explained to you, not just once. You can have it. I say to clients, we are going to have this conversation 10 times until you can do my job. No, you don't have to go that far, but I really want the client to know what they're buying and why and what it does for them. No questions, nothing ambiguous, everything transparent. That is absolutely your right as a consumer.
Right. And it's in your industry, generally speaking, and there's also a stereotype a lot of times where, like, I used to be in BNI, and I would remember that there was these, financial people that just had taken the test, and they're 6 months in, and I won't name what companies and stuff, but there's those general companies, and it's a churn and burn. It's like, okay, just go after all of the friends that go after your family, and then they stay in for 6 months, and then they go. So again, that's just the importance of why you need someone that's experienced, that's been doing a long time, that's not just going to sell your policy so they can have the grin face to face and just looking for
Yeah.
that commission. That this is truly their career. So I applaud you on that, Greta.
I know no other way to be except that, your integrity of what you do in this industry and every industry is important, and that's the only way you're gonna continue to serve people. And, GoFundMe,
Hmm.
I think is such a beautiful thing, but it bothers me when I see someone like a friend of a friend of a friend I saw had a GoFundMe page for someone, and I knew that that person made a really good living and had a really good occupation as far as like able to buy disability insurance, and they had an accident and there was a GoFundMe page, and I just thought, oh, if I had just talked to that person before this accident, maybe they weren't insurable, but we wouldn't have had to put the pressure on the community. And GoFundMe and things like that can be really beautiful, and I think should be reserved for the families that need them and the people that need them. But when someone has a good occupation, and by good, I'm just defining it as you make money on paper,
Right,
not
right.
you don't make money on paper. I don't mean the actual job itself, but that person could have protected their income upwards of a couple $100,000. The injury they had would have been covered, and their family would not have had to resort to something like GoFundMe.
Yes, and what I was kind of not joking, but not joking, the other day with my wife about that. I was like, look, if something ever happens to me, please don't put me on GoFundMe, because the last thing I want is one of my friends that I've known for 10 years and he donates like $20 and like, what, really? My life was like, my friendship with you was only like $20. That's the best you can do.
You got to
So
donate, and you got to donate anonymously.
there you go. Yes, yes. So yeah, that's always sad when we see those scenarios, and that's why it's about planning. And I'm sure, as far as the cost, it's relatively inexpensive versus the when you need it. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. So next, let's talk about, in the green room, we talked about business valuations. Why does a business valuation have anything to do with what we're talking about today?
So let's use my vegan cupcake shop again. My vegan cupcake shop just becomes this thing. My key baker is my key recipe person who's doing all my secret spices for my wonderful uh, display. I'm starting to open location 2, location 3. But let's say I want to start going the route of getting investors. And they want to know not just, my P&L and how I'm doing, but what's the value of this business? What's the value of this secret recipe that makes these vegan cupcakes so amazing that we're going to franchise and go into the next stratosphere with the business? Well, that process of getting the valuation done is very specialized. There's services that do it, there's people that do it. Their fees are not egregious, their fees are quite low. And if I'm going to talk to an investor about the infusion that I need to franchise, or if I'm going to bring on a partner, or if I'm going to maybe try to keep my key baker to write an SOP for me so I can turn that into a franchise. Forget the key person for a second. But if I want to take my business to the next level, how do I actually value that company? Or maybe I want to pass the business off to heirs. But how do I actually value that company? To me, I might look at my revenue and I might look at what I think is growth and I might come up with sort of a non-calculated number. My business is worth 10 million. But when I'm purchasing key person or when I'm funding what's called a buy sell, an agreement between two owners, or I'm satisfying an investor agreement, that valuation done by a third party is the real number that's going to be used in a lot of those forward trajectories for my business. And that valuation, almost like an assessment on the house, is the real number that then we can start talking about what kind of coverage is needed. So, I wouldn't say that just you wake up one day and decide to spend the money on having your business valued, but there's only 3 ways to exit your business: pass it on, die in your business, or sell. At some point, this beautiful child of a business that you've built will have to go somewhere. And if there's an inherent value to it, wouldn't you want to know that? And if you go out into the marketplace with all the other vegan cupcake shops, don't I want to know that I could sell my company or pass on my company or insure my employees the right way? So often I'll talk to business owners when they want the key person insurance or when they have an investor. And my question is always, what was the latest valuation? And almost 9 out of 10 times, there was no current valuation. And it's mind blowing to me that an investor would give a company money without asking to see the value of the business done
Right.
by a third party, not just how I feel about it.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. And as we start to wrap up, we are going to just make sure there's no other questions. So you're here live. We are about 40 minutes in with the Miami Business Leaders with Gretta Zutz, and we're talking insurance. So the last question that we have, Greta, is which other professionals should business owners bring into these conversations? So if I'm having a one-on-one with you and I'm saying all of these type of things, is there any other, internal people in my company or just outside, professionals that I should make sure is aware that I'm doing, I'm signing up with you? I don't want it to be where, like how you said, the husband comes in and then like, wait, what is this? Or,
Yeah,
or no, we need to do it this way or whatever the
yeah.
case is for taxes or whatever.
Absolutely. Internally, if your spouse has a role in your business, or your spouse is your sounding board in your business. They might not be on payroll, they might be on payroll, but you might want to talk to your spouse about, even if you're the decision maker, these things do affect your livelihood. So it's never a bad idea if you have that dynamic, if you are married or you're in a partnership where finances are very clear and open, to talk to your partner about any type of thing you're trying to do. Not a bad idea. Internally, also, anyone else that makes decisions about the business, about how you're spending money, about your P&L, that's a good person to maybe bring into the conversation.
Okay.
Externally, your CPA, your tax preparer, your business attorney, and if you have another financial advisor, someone who manages your investments, it's a good idea to bring them into the conversation and say, I've got an expert. I want to start working with them. Let's run the ideas past you. Never a bad idea to also introduce them to your CPA. Your CPA is working with your history of your finances. Maybe they're doing a little bit of forecasting, and then hopefully your financial professionals are working together with you and your attorney to make sure that you have the most successful business that you've worked so hard for.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, Greta. Are there any last final words as we wrap up?
No, that's it. I just wanted to thank you for your time today and for giving me a chance to talk about what I dream about at night, which is insurance policies.
There
I
you
love
go.
them.
Yes. So we're going to end the stream. Don't leave because I want to talk to you because I've been actually vegan for 9 years and I love cupcakes.
Ah,
So I think I have an investor.
I
So we're going to be
knew.
talking. We're going to
I
talk about
knew
some
it.
business deals here because I think you're onto something with the vegan cupcake. I just need
There's
to
no good
invest the
one.
money. There's no good ones. Oh,
Down
oh,
here, I feel like it's all about the applesauce and the flaxseed. That's our secret.
All right. I'm gonna we don't have sponsors in our show, but there is a few good ones. So offline, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that where you can get some.
Perfect.
But I'm gonna still give shout out. Although
Yeah.
she's not sponsoring, but Bunny Cakes they have one in Doral and they used to have one in Wynwood, but Bunny Cakes, I know for sure is still in Doral
Oh,
and
good.
they are good for vegan cupcakes.
I stand corrected. In New York, it used to be one called baby cakes, so now I
Okay.
will switch to bunny cakes down
Awesome.
here.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much.